Welcome, Gemini, your in-depth monthly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for May 2026 for the ascendant, the sun, or the moon. I'm going to share with you the big themes of the month first of all, then on screen your event chart as we come into the month always provides an influential backdrop. I'll then go through each of the influences frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what you can expect by the end of the video in terms of energy, work, relationships, and finances. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now to help it to continue to thrive. And please also click or tap the bell notification symbol. As we come into this month, Gemini, there is a full moon. It's a full moon in a part of your chart that's very much to do with the everyday routines, the details, the practicalities, but it does face off with the sun in a rather tender area for you personally. In fact, your ruler Mercury is going to be moving into that tender area on the 3rd. I need to share about that with you. But we are going to see the power of Mars very much threaded through this month. And as the month goes on, in week 3, there's a very flirty link between Venus in your sign and Mars in the sign of Aries, which is going to be intriguing. But there is a cluster of energy in a more sheltered part of your scope at the heart of the month. And then from the 17th, Mercury moves into your sign, going to be joined by the Sun on the 21st, but they're both immediately connecting with the electric energies of Uranus, which is really exciting. And then, bringing the celestial curtain down on the month, we have a blue moon. We haven't had one since August 2023, two full moons in the same month, but this one is in the sign of Sagittarius, with the moon opposite the sun in your sign. But the position of the moon is forging an awkward link to Mars, still tucked up in a more psychological area for you. So on the screen now is your event chart. And as ever, we need to be mindful of the two luminaries. And of course, they are coming into that opposition later on the 1st. But there's the sun in Taurus, which is very much to do with stability, can be earthly pleasures, can see us thinking about our values, and perhaps also the more healing dimension in the 12th house for you. But the moon in the sign of Scorpio is known as being in its full. So what the moon can do in Scorpio is make things a little tense. And it's asking you in the first 2 weeks of this new month to get a balance between the more practical, everyday routine parts of your situation and the more tender, emotional, and perhaps even spiritual parts of your nature. And because the moon clashes with Pluto as we come into this month, that can create some tension. Pluto's in a part of your situation which is to do with expansion, but it can, because it's very much to do with revelations, it may be that there's something of a contractual or legal nature that you may need to tackle to do with work, which can be the 6th house, which could cause some tension. The other thing that can happen with 12th house full moons, this one is the flower moon, is that maybe at work, if there is some issues, they won't necessarily be addressed in an upfront way because the sun in the 12th house is the sector in traditional astrology known as secret enemy. So there is some backbiting or some politics. Someone could be critical of your performance but won't necessarily tell you. So you need to make sure that you're conducting all the tasks that you have in a very accurate way, but also be conscious in terms of your physical vitality that if you do feel a little bit underpowered, it may be because certain things are just perhaps draining you a little bit, maybe certain connections and friendships. So you could feel quite sensitive as you come into the month. Now, your ruler Mercury is also in a conjunction with Chiron. Now, if you have got someone around you who's very trustworthy and you can share a tender matter with them, then they can be of great benefit to you. But Chiron in the sign of Aries is about our identity. And if you're unsure about around group dynamics, I think what this full moon can do in the first 2 weeks of the month is just see you retreat a little bit back into yourself, particularly with Mercury moving into Taurus on the 3rd. Now, Saturn, the planet of structure, continues in that 11th house for the next 2 years. So I think you are going to be perhaps changing up certain associations during that time. But Mars, the planet of passion, starts the month in that part of your chart. And as I say, makes that sparkling link to Venus in your sign by week 3. But Mars actually is in a square with Jupiter as you begin the month. Now, that can give you a lot of confidence around your money making skills, Jupiter in the second house. But Mars square Jupiter can see us over egg the pudding. We can almost be too assured, or we may feel that an idea we've got or someone we're connecting with is the real deal, but just be aware these are very sensitive influences on that moon and Mercury moving into your 12th house. I think it's going to be later in the month when you can really start to feel much more self-assured and confident. Now, what we do have then is a full moon on the 16th, but not before Mercury has moved forwards and does itself come into that right angle with Pluto. So a sensitive matter could come to the surface, I think, towards the end of week 2. Maybe you're going to share your point of view on something. You may reveal something, but just be aware that there may be some tensions going on. But then that new moon of the 16th is a supermoon, but it's also in a conjunction with your ruler. And where's that full moon at the start of the month can make you more aware of where you can really trust people, or perhaps where you need to be a bit more protective about confidential issues. I think Mercury conjoining the new moon in Taurus, the moon loves being in Taurus, suggests that you can start to look at life in a bit of a different way. Even if the first week or so did throw up some opposition or disappointment, or you did feel a bit below power, you can start to make sense of it really well. Not least by the 17th, Mercury switches into your sign, and then it is going to be coming into a much more favorable link to Pluto. And your natural analytical skills can really start to dazzle because Mercury links with Uranus. So even if you find at the start of this month that things aren't heading forwards at the pace you would like, or it seems that some people who don't necessarily have your best interest seem to be getting the wins, you can start to gain enormous traction from Mercury's move into your sign on the 17th. So do know that. It's just that on the 18th, Mars moves from Aries, where it's at home, and into Taurus for the following 6 weeks. Now, Mars in any 12th house transit does have a tendency to rake up subconscious anger that we think we dealt with, whether it's to do with a loss, a separation, maybe an accident we had in the past. Our dreams can become more vivid, but also we can feel more triggered if we feel people are unfair. And just to tell you, in the last 10 days of this month, Mars is going to be coming into a square itself with Pluto. If you are involved in any politics in your situation, they could get stronger in the last phase of this month. But much more positively for you personally, Venus moves forwards and on the 19th moves into Cancer. Now, Venus isn't in any kind of essential dignity in Cancer, but she does, I feel, really prosper there. And some of the ideas that you've been cooking up earlier in the month can start to pay off and no, very handsomely. Now, it won't necessarily give you the complete return this month, but I think early in June, you could have a major breakthrough around your income, which is exciting. But then on the 21st, the Sun joins your sign, connects with Uranus, and that really is going to see you move into the moment. And some of the things that have been disappointing, even if there is the potential for some politics with Mars squaring off with Pluto, Pluto, you're just going to be much more in that part of your nature which can sparkle, is effervescent, gets your head round ideas quickly. Things will start moving at pace. If there are one or two people who are not on board, you're going to be more philosophical about it. And then that brings us to that blue moon on the 31st. So it's in your opposite sign. And just as you're really getting ahead of steam up, someone could in some way say that you haven't been spending enough time with them. Could be a partner, family member, friend. But Mars in that 12th house just asks you to be conscious that Mars in the 12th house, again, that secret enemies issue. And Mars, of course, can be an aggressive influence. The 12th house can be shielded and therefore not obvious. So just be cautious. But I think on the whole, your physical vitality, your ability to be in the moment and to dart forwards at pace is really enhanced in the last phase of this month. And that full moon is just saying that sometimes in life, we have to be very single-minded. We know that not everyone is necessarily going to get or agree with what we're trying to do. But in the latter part of this month, as the sun moves forwards, it starts to forge tremendous sextile to Neptune, and by the end of the month to nearly Saturn. And that's going to see you really starting to gain traction. It's also going to forge a tremendous trine to Pluto. So it's a month really, Gemini, of some tender dynamics. And for an air sign like you that's very much into communication and not necessarily so focused on the moon type energies, you are being just urged to be aware of the more emotional, psychological, and spiritual dimension in your situation. But most of all, when you're dealing with other people, because 12th house energies can just throw up people who may not have our best interests at heart. I'm going to summarize those four areas of energy, work, relationships, and finances next. But just to say, I've slashed the price of my personal horoscopes. You can now order three, but pay for just one. Why? Because people are feeling the pinch, but I also want to share the astrology with more people to gain, like I have over my life. And what you'll gain is your life roadmap report is the one you pay for, which helps you to understand the patterns in your life. But the free chart is your 12 months transit and your draconic karmic soul analysis report. It's three for the price of one. Please see underneath for more. Now, if you've yet to watch your Uranus 84-year cycle video, that's on the screen. I'm also showing on the screen the Mars-Saturn conjunction. That's a 28-year cycle video. That event has gone, but in the video, I explain about the segments of 7 years because there's a lot of focus particularly on YouTube, on Saturn returns, but Saturn's always active wherever it is in its journey, and particularly when it goes through its squares and oppositions, just as powerful as the return very often. So do check that out. If you'd like to work with me personally, please see my testimonials below. And if you've yet to sign up for your free daily horoscope, find your device each morning for your celestial early day pit stop. Please sign up for that underneath. So, in terms of energy, we are going to see some tender vibes this month. If there's something that you're a bit concerned about, particularly in terms of your physical vitality, I would go and get it checked out because sometimes if we're not feeling very well, there may actually be a completely logical reason for it. Maybe something's a bit out of kilter in terms of our levels. The sixth house can be things like, whether our iron is at the right level, our magnesium, our B12, all these kind of things. So if you do feel a bit drained, then do check it out. Just be aware from a psychological viewpoint with the initial position of the sun, the full moon, and then Mercury and Mars both moving through that 12th house. If there are some issues around you, around trustworthy or people's loyalty, unfortunately, they could show up. So that may be at work, it could be around a relationship. But if you're in a relationship that you're really enjoying, or you're doing a job that's very dynamic and creative, that link between Venus and Pluto at the start of the month is fantastic. And you really can demonstrate to people just how dashing you can be, especially from the time the sun moves into your sign from the 21st and Mercury from the 17th. As far as money is concerned, I think that Venus moving on the 19th into the sign of Cancer can definitely see an uptick in your income. And particularly in the following month when it comes into the conjunction with Jupiter. But do know that is going to be an opportunity for you. It's been a pleasure being with you, Gemini. Thank you so much for joining me and look forward to seeing you again soon.